what's up guys? Today I'm going to do something a little different than the typical Philosophy Friday, although Philosophy Friday will be coming tomorrow. I want to talk a little bit about astrology, and how all roads have led me there. I've always been interested in human nature, fundamentally, and specifically human personality. So I started off studying personality psychology in kind of a popular context. I was taken by Myers-Briggs for a while when I was a late teenager, and pretty much mastered that entire system. And because I mastered that entire system, I found it to be a little faulty. I didn't just build a hubris on that basis about my knowledge. I started to question it. I thought, well, if I know everything there is to know about this system, then clearly there's more to human personality than just this system. Because the human personality is a lot broader and a lot more nuanced and a lot more complex than any man-made system can truly conceptualize. So I moved on, I studied Enneagram and HBDI and things like that to some extent as well, but then I got into Big Five, which is the most popular academic framework within which to understand the human personality. And I saw that as a little more of an open system than Myers-Briggs and the others, because it measured personality traits in terms of percentiles. And so it, at least on that basis, showed that each person's personality is very unique, rather than putting you into one of 16 boxes like Myers-Briggs does. So for that reason, I was pretty deep into that and read a lot of academic literature about Big Five for a long time. And then, it was during that journey and reading about Carl Jung too that I found Jordan Peterson's work, and on psychology and the range of other topics that he does. And I liked Peterson because of the cross-disciplinary approach that he took to his work. And I think that's how you need to approach psychology for sure, and philosophy, which is my primary field, and human nature in general. But of course, I studied philosophy academically, did a master's degree in it, and really human nature and human personality still always surfaced as my deepest interest, I think. So I think all roads kind of led me to astrology. And one thing that's interesting about astrology is that it is very much, even much more so than Big Five, it's very much an open system, whereas all other systems to some degree are closed. What I mean by that is that the more you learn about it, the deeper you go, the more detail you go into, the more accurate it gets, not less. So one thing that most scientific fields do, well, all scientific fields and most scientific endeavors, one problem they run into is that they tend to sacrifice the probability of accuracy for increased precision. So they go very deep into one thing. But the deeper they go into that thing, the more they risk losing sense of the big picture. Well, the interesting thing about astrology is that the deeper you go, the more important it becomes to dilate every now and then back to see the bigger picture, how that specific nuance fits within the context of the bigger picture. So, for example, you can study your placements, right? Each planet represents a different part of your personality, and then each sign that planet is in represents a certain style that you take in expressing that part of yourself. You can study each of those placements individually, but that's only going to get you so far, because you still have to take a step back and look at how that part of yourself fits in with the rest and what the relationships between that placement and the other placements are. Which leads me to my point in this video, is that I've been studying for astrology for 1 year now, and I've noticed that the most important and the deepest thing that you can look into right away, as soon as you start, building an interest in astrology, is the aspects. The aspects are relationships between two signs, two placements, two planets. And they come in a range of different varieties. You have conjunctions where they're going to be, close together and in the same sign, which means they're kind of in harmony with each other and almost indistinguishable at times, which is a good thing because they're harmonious, but it's also a challenging thing because you're not always aware maybe which aspect of your personality is taking control in the moment. And then you have oppositions, which seem like opposites, but really they're facing each other from 180 degrees apart. And those two parts of yourself have to learn to work together to find balance. So those are just two examples of aspects. But, about a month after I was, really starting to go balls deep into astrology, one of my friends who had already been into astrology for a while sent me a description of my Mercury conjunct Jupiter aspect, and she asked me, is this accurate of you? And it happened to be my strongest and closest, my strongest aspect in my entire natal chart. And I read it and I was like, holy shit, yeah, that's the most accurate thing I've ever read about my personality ever. Like, yeah, Capricorn moon is, very interesting and really hits home. Capricorn ascendant is really interesting and really hits home. And there are some other placements that do too, my Venus and Gemini, I read those things on their own and I'm like, yeah, that describes that part of me. But when I read about my Mercury conjunct Jupiter, that hit home in a much deeper and much broader way. And that's what's cool about astrology, is that the deeper you go, the more accurate it gets. And if it were all bullshit, then the opposite would happen, right? The deeper and more detail you go into, the less accurate it would get. But that's not what happens. So from that sort of philosophy of science standpoint, which is also one of my main interests, there has to be something to it, So if you're just getting into astrology, I would recommend, maybe download the CoStar app, glaze over the placements, but really dive into the aspects. Pay attention to those things. Look at what your strongest aspects are and read about those first. And those will probably, I say probably, but definitely, be the most true descriptions of your personality that you have ever read. So I would recommend starting there, and that will guarantee that you will go very far down a lifelong rabbit hole of being interested in and maybe obsessed over astrology, because that's what did it for me, and I'm not easily convinced that anything is true. I need damn good reasons, which is, why I like philosophy and logic and stuff. So anyway, check out the aspects, and maybe I'll do more astrology videos and on more detailed subjects, but it's so broad and there's so much to learn. I mean, I'm a year in, and I'm realizing how little I know about it, because I discover something new every time I read something. So maybe I won't have the most expertise in describing this aspect or that, but I can speak from a combination of what I know already and my experience and how I've related to a lot of these things that I've discovered in my natal chart and in those of other people that I know. So anyway, that's my first astrology video. Check out the aspects. It'll probably suck you in. Actually, definitely. Alright, cheers guys.